Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. This is Laurie Smith, and this is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another Restoration, and it is 6:30 here in the morning, Monday, August 22nd. I'm glad to be here and just hoping that you're having a good morning. I'm just waking up here, having a coffee, and just getting ready for the week here. And so I had a pretty good weekend, and I hope that yours was good too. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in to my show. I really appreciate everybody who's taking the time to listen to my shows. You know, I check my show stats there, and I have like 52,270 odd shows listened to since 2009. So, you know, I really appreciate everybody who's spent this time with me and listening to what I have to say. And, you know, it's a lot of work keeping up with all of the stuff that I do. So I really appreciate it. And so we'll get right into this. This is just a morning sort of reflection, really. How are we doing on our healing journey as survivors of abuse? You know, what am I doing to taking a look at it in a positive light, what progress am I making, and what can I do to sort of do a better job with self-care and self-nurturing and coping mechanisms and things like this. And so hopefully, you're getting something out of these shows too. And I know that I do, so it helps to keep me accountable, really, to myself, to actually do some work on my healing journey instead of just putting it off to the side. So that's why I'm doing these shows. And so, if you're, a survivor of abuse, you have to listen, really make sure that you're safe enough, really, to listen to my shows, so that they don't trigger you and send you backward in your healing journey. You don't want that. Nobody does. And so you have to make sure that you're safe enough. And there's a safety first chapter in the Survivor to Thriver manual from ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program. If you go to their website, you can find their Survivor to Thriver manual. It's free. It's online. You can download the PDF. You can read it right online there. And the first 60 pages are safety first, really, just looking at how to keep yourself safe, make sure that you're not triggered, and what to do just in case you are triggered, and how to protect yourself, right? So make sure you get that information. It's very important. And so we'll just get right into this here. It's Monday morning, and I'm ready for a good week. I'm always pretty hopeful at the start of the week. I start my day out really actually pretty hopeful. And just depending on how the day goes, depends on how my day ends up. I tend to be a really happy morning person, but by the end of the day, just depending on what's been happening, that can change. So by the end of the day, by the time nighttime comes around, depends on what kind of day I've had, to what kind of mood I'm in. So I do, you're kind of hearing me in my positive frame of mind in the morning, So I'm always I start out my day pretty positive, and pretty hopeful. And the same with Monday. I start my week out pretty positive too. It just depends on what happens in between now and Friday. So it depends on as to decide what kind of a week it really was, right? So so we'll get right into this. This is looking at HAVOCA's Victim to Survivor to Thriver information. That's HAVOCA. That's help for adult victims of child abuse. HAVOCA, HAVOCA.org. And they have some really interesting info there. If you look under the Survivor tab, then you just go down the left side of the screen. Excuse me, there's just tons and tons of information there. Really great website. So I hope everybody will go check that out. And they had this Victim to Survivor to Thriver thing, which is really interesting to look at. It sort of helps us to see maybe where we're at, and how we're doing, whether we're more towards the survivor or more towards the victim still, or really moving into that thriver realm of real healing, and real wholeness, And so it's interesting to look at. This morning's is the victim might place, or they often do place their own needs last, right? Everybody else's needs comes first. The victim's needs come last, right? The survivor is learning healthy needs, and then they have this little thing in brackets, and they say, "See healing the child within and gift to myself." So we'll have to take a look at that on their website. Be sure and check that out. I haven't looked at it yet. And the thriver places self first, realizing that the only way to function and eventually help others. That's the only way to function and help others, right? So the victim places his own needs last. And a lot of people do that, even if they weren't abused as children. So many people actually do that sort of thing. it's not necessarily that a person would do that just because they were abused as a child. I've seen lots and lots of people who grew up in healthy, healthy surroundings and loving families who still place their own needs last and don't, for whatever reason. That's, it's not always to do really with abuse, that sort of thing. But if a person has been abused, then quite often that's the case. I know for myself that's that can happen to me. I'm not really there now. Place its own needs last. I definitely am more towards the thriver on this one because I realize that they said that the thriver places self first, realizing that is the only way to function and eventually help others. I actually realized that a long time ago. It might have been through something I read, or probably was more than likely some book I was reading or something I was looking at that actually showed me that. And then I thought, that's so true, because how can you really help others if you're not in a good place yourself, And so I started to realize that I had to start working on my own needs as well as trying to help those around me if I could, right? But I need to help myself first. I think that's very important, We really, our needs were actually, and I mean, this is very true. Children's needs, growing up in an abusive home or abusive environment somewhere, or being abused as a child, obviously our needs were not met. And nobody cares really in a situation where you grow up in a dysfunctional, abusive home, which I did. The children's needs are not important. It's what the abuser's needs are really. That's the abuser's needs that come first. And the abuser's needs actually always, sort of outrank everybody else, and so the children's needs are not being met. That's why it's abuse, right? So whether it's physical needs, emotional, psychological, mental, like stability type stuff, whether it's emotional or physical or spiritual, anything like that, neglect, we're talking these children's needs are obviously not being met, growing up abused, right? So then the survivor, right, the victim has to learn how to care. That's why I'm doing these shows, really, is because we have to learn how to care about ourselves. That we should care about ourselves, and that we do count and we do matter. And that our needs do matter and they do count. So this is kind of where this whole, my whole journey began. Was realizing that I needed help because my needs were completely non-existent growing up, not just mine, but my siblings as well. But I mean, I'm just talking about myself here. But when you grow up with two abusive parents, and there's nobody else in the situation like loving grandparents or loving aunts and uncles or even loving older siblings, right? There's just nobody there for support. It's really a horrific situation to grow up in, and so many people do. And it's like, I had to learn that my needs do matter and they do count, and that just because I have a need or, I have needs things that are very, very important for me to take care of, that I don't deserve to be mistreated just for making sure that my needs are being met. And so as an adult, I have a real hard time doing that because if I realize that I have a need that I need to have met, whether it's working situation or in a relationship or whatever, then I'm afraid to say anything because I think, well, that's just going to cause abuse. That's just going to cause that person to become upset with me because I need something, because my needs were not met as a child, and anytime I opened my mouth, I was abused. Right? So I wasn't allowed to say anything, no matter what my needs were. So, this is a real hard situation for a lot of people. I know I've come really full circle in this, probably, much more towards the thriver on this one. The survivor is learning healthy needs, right? The thriver is placing self first, realizing it's the only way to function and eventually help others. That's the only way to function, right? So that's true, and I think I'm much more towards the thriver on that, realizing that, our needs are very important, that we do need to make sure we help ourselves and get help first, and that in order that we can function and help other people, and just for ourselves to get help, right? So that's a good one, and I really like that. That's awesome. So we'll look at next up. Excuse me, my voice is terrible this morning. I'm just waking up here, and haven't really been awake all that long. having coffee here, trying to wake up. So, help predict. This is Avoca. This is guilt and shame information, and this is the third part. First, it was as you know, as a child, looking at the guilt and shame, and then the last part is as an adult. And they said, when a child finally reaches, by chronological definition, an adult stage of life and acquires full realization of the abuse to which he or she has been subjected, breaking the web is not the simple decision that others might assume. It says often the survivor will decide to leave the situation without disclosing the suffering to those near and dear to them. They simply want the abuse to stop. They said, but this is from their website. Here you can go there and check it out. It's Guilt and Shame. Said, but surviving without the abuser brings its own problems. It says leaving behind the abuse often means leaving behind everything else that a human being needs to survive. Companionship, familiarity, security, a sense of belonging are all fundamental to human survival. Loneliness can make the guilt and shame more painful to bear. Should this survivor decide to disclose all that they have suffered, then of course they take the risk that the threats from childhood will come true. They may indeed lose the love, affection, and protection of all those near and dear to them, who so often will disbelieve or even blame the survivor rather than accept the consequences of believing the truth about a partner or parent. It says no one can undo the abuse you have suffered, but while you cannot live the rest of your life without that abuse, you can still enjoy your life despite of it, right? So this is a really interesting article here because this is where I'm at. I'm an adult survivor, left my abusive family behind, and what they're saying is very true. These things are really harsh. It's not always that a family or that there will be family members who will be supportive, because there's this whole idea of protection, right? And people will quite often they'll either disbelieve the survivor of abuse and just claim that they're making all this stuff up, even though they know that that's not true, and they know about the abuse, but they still deny it, sort of being in denial sort of thing. Or they'll blame the victim, the survivor of abuse, saying it was their fault and all of this would never have happened, And there's so many, scenarios, really, that survivors of abuse have gone through, right? All of us have been through different things. And I mean, sometimes there might be one person that was supportive, in the family unit, whether it was, like I said, a distant relative or an aunt or an uncle or one of the grandparents or somebody might have been somewhat supportive, but still yet allowed the abuse to continue, and didn't get the survivor any help, and it's the victim any help. It's a really horrific situation because this is life. This is why this stuff is so damaging, And it's until everybody's willing to be honest about the whole thing and be truthful about the whole thing, there's not much you can do. I mean, it's like myself, I realized I didn't have anything to lose really to come forward with my story because I never had a family. I mean, I grew up with my biological family, but it was really just a big mess, but nobody was looking out for each other. It was all, I'm going to abuse you so that I don't become abused. I'm going to join the abusers, right? So everybody was just, not good to each other in the family, and we were all dealing with this abuse from my parents, both of my parents. And it was, it wasn't good. So as an adult then, there's only a few of us left, but I had to actually cut all them off. I just cut them out of my life because they weren't there for me then. They're not there for me now. They're still toxic, and I'm like, I'm on my healing journey. I want to look at this, and be real about this whole thing instead of pretending and trying to make it seem better than it was, or I must have been a horrible kid. That's why my parents treated me that way. I mean, my parents were brought up on abuse charges. They were diagnosed mentally ill. I mean, my siblings know the truth, right? There's not very many of us left, like I said, but the ones that are living know the truth and have actually we've talked about things in the past, but that doesn't mean that just because we've talked about the abuse, and, some of my older siblings would say stuff like, yeah, our parents should have been shot and hung and brought up, and, in the old days they would have just put a noose around their neck and hung them for the stuff that they did to us. And it's just like, they would have been, had the courts really done what they should have done, they would have put them away for life, And the thing, we've all talked about this, my siblings and myself, but it doesn't mean that that's the answer, that just because we agreed that the abuse was horrific and that never should have happened to us, we didn't deserve to be treated that way, and not one of us deserved that, to have this life of pain, that, That just because we all agree on that doesn't mean that we're close. You know, because we don't know how to function at all together as a unit, as a family unit. And we can't even spend like 2 hours together without somebody starting like some type of aggression towards the other one. And I decided, I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm not playing that role anymore. I did a Survivor weekend check-in video. If you want to go check that out on my website, Born in Hell. And I was talking about that kind of beginning. That's my first one that I've done. That one, that to do like a Survivor weekend check-in video thing. I was talking about the role-playing thing, and you can get a lot of that information. If you ever want to check out some really good information on that, if you haven't already seen it and already have the books, John Bradshaw has some great info on that. Healing the child within, the inner child, and also that healing the shame that binds you. Those two books are really, really good. Homecoming, yeah. Homecoming, healing the inner child within you or whatever. And then there's that one about healing the shame that binds you. Those are two really, really good books. And they really go into detail about the role playing that goes on. So yeah, it is tough. It is hard, and we'll come back and look at the rest. Look at this some more tomorrow, because it is a very difficult situation. And for those, I thought about it very carefully before I came forward in public with my story. Either way, I was going to reach out and get help. Whether I went public with it didn't really matter. I realized that I needed to reach out and get help because the abuse that I suffered as a child, had always affected me, had crushed me as a child, and then as an adult was crushing me, and I couldn't even breathe. By the time I got to be 41, 42, I had been wanting to end my life, and for so long, I really felt I couldn't go on anymore. And I knew at that point that that was a sign of desperation. I really needed to get help. So it didn't matter whether I went public or not with my story. I would have gotten help, in one way or another, and I decided at that point that I was more worth getting help and worth reaching out, that I was worth more to me than hiding and not disclosing the abuse to somebody and keeping the family secret and possibly causing waves and friction between family members. I really didn't care at that point. So I wrote a book and I showed it to my family. I gave it to my abuser dad to read. I'm like, there you go. It's all there. It's all true. You can read it for yourself. The world knows. I've told everybody. And that was such a sense of satisfaction for me because I was never going to get anything from them anyway. It's not like I'm in the will. My parents were really poor. Like nobody has anything. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I was going to hang out for some sort of estate. You know what I mean? I've got nothing from them. You know what I mean? And even still, would that be worth it to me to sell my soul for estate money and a will? Sometimes it is for people and sometimes it's not. And I wouldn't be able to say because my parents never had any money, so it wouldn't be an issue that I could even really speak to. But for myself, I really had nothing to lose, by coming forward with my story. And I actually showed my abuser dad the book, and all my siblings saw it. And do they like what I'm doing? Absolutely not. There's only one person in my immediate family that actually is okay with what I'm doing, and that's my nephew. And he thinks that what I'm doing is good because at least, the truth is being told, And so he's not holding anything against me, but the rest of my family is totally not happy with me going public. But, I really don't care because it was for me, for my survival. It was for me. So, yeah, I'm making sure that my needs are met, and you need to do the same thing. Even if it doesn't, you don't have to go public with your story. Make sure you just reach out and get help. And even if it's like anonymous help, like whatever, anonymous help is great because you don't have to tell anybody your real name, and you don't have to tell anybody who you are, where you live. You can talk to people and get help, right? It's very important, right? There are lots of mediums, ways you can get help, right? So looking at a positive reinforcement, what am I doing right in my daily walk here? On the weekend, I did my Survivor weekend check-in video, which I thought was pretty cool. And because I really like to be just a support for people out there who may not have anybody to talk to, right? Nobody knows what they're going through. It's very, very painful, right? And I just like to encourage people, you've got to hang in there, man. You got to do this with me. You got to walk this walk and get some help, This is what we deserve, right? So what am I doing right in my daily walk? I've sort of missed out on a few things. I've been so busy, actually, and I'm trying to get organized. So I've kind of put off the breathing work and the yoga, but I'm going to get back to that. And also, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good. as far as everything else goes, spiritual, emotional. Positive reinforcement. Here's an affirmation I could say. This is the next positive affirmation. I am a friendly person. We could say this. I am a friendly person. Well, if I am a friendly person, then I am a friendly person. If I'm not, then I really have to work on it. I'd say I'm a really friendly person, but I also have my guard up. I have walls and barriers built around me, but I have very, very strong boundaries with people. So I'm friendly, but I'm not overly friendly. And people wouldn't necessarily see me as a person that they're going to get anything out of, and I think that's why they stay away from me, because they realize that I'm just not playing any games, and they're not going to get much out of me. So that's why I think a lot of people don't really want to hang around. That's true. I think people use people quite a bit, and if somebody wants to come over and have a coffee with me, they're more than welcome to. But I think a lot of times people just use people for, I don't have a car, so I can't give people rides. There's nothing I can offer them. My husband's terminally ill, so nobody wants to hang around with me. You know what I mean? But I am actually a very, very friendly person. And if anybody was, to see me on this, I have great relationships with people that I know, that I run into weekly or daily in my world, and but they're not friends. They're just acquaintances, right? But it's too bad, because I am actually a very, very friendly person. And I could actually say that and believe that, right? Self-care. What are we doing? What am I doing to care for myself physically, spiritually, emotionally? I got to get back on my rower this week. Last week I sort of took the week off, but I'm going to be back on my rower doing my rowing. Spiritually, I had a great day yesterday, just, because I'm a Christian, but I don't bring that into this show. Just communing with my higher power, communing with my Creator, and spending time, in that space of comfort and love, from the eternal, all-knowing, all-wise Creator. Just spending time with in that and with Him is just so beautiful. So yeah, spiritually, I'm in a great place. Emotionally, I'm doing quite well, and physically, I just need to work on that, right? We're going to look at Avoca's Survivor's Bill of Rights, right? We're looking at the personal boundaries ones. It says, for the preservation of personal boundaries, you have the right to ask for help in healing without having to accept help with work, play, or love. So, we have the right to ask for help in healing without having to accept help with work, play, or love. So we don't have to have people, just because we ask for help in healing doesn't mean that we have to accept help with any work that we're doing, or play, or any play type situation, or love. So in other words, it doesn't have to be connected to that. So in other words, we don't have to ask for help in healing and then also and only accept it with the fact that somebody's also going to help us with other things too. I guess that's what they're trying to say. That's kind of interesting. We just have rights, and we need to know that we do have these rights, right? Bill of Rights. Here's a personal Bill of Rights from Charles H. Whitfield, M.D., Healing the Child Within. And we're on number 14. I think we might have done 14. I'm not sure on Friday. We'll do 14, 15. Okay, 14, I have a right to expect honesty from others. And number 15, I have a right to all of my feelings. Isn't that the truth, man? And especially as a survivor of abuse, I get real tired of people trying to tell me how to feel. I really do. I get offended by it. I'm like, don't tell me how to feel, man. Until you've had the stuff done to you that I've had done to me, don't tell me how to feel. I'm not going to tell you how to feel, right? I really become highly offended when people try to tell me how to feel as a survivor of abuse, And it's very discouraging when people do that, because they always I think they're just trying to help, Sometimes people are just trying to help, well, you just need to do this, and you need to look at things, you just need to do this, and if you would just see things this way and forgive and forget. I've even had my abuser dad tell me that. You just need to forgive and move on. He didn't say you need to forgive me because I apologize for what I did to you. No, he just even the abusers will pull crap like that, But it's like, I've had so many people in my life try to tell me how to feel about the abuse that I suffered as a child. Come on. That's absolutely, to me, that's very irresponsible, if you ask me. But I think a lot of times people are trying to help, and so they're trying to say the right things, right? And they don't know what the right thing is to say, so they just say something like that, which is very offensive to somebody like me. And I'm like, you don't tell me how to feel about the destruction to my body and my mind and my soul and my spirit. I'll tell you how I feel. So we have the right to we have this number 15, I have a right to all of my feelings, and we do, right? And number 14, I have a right to expect honesty from others. And if I'm going to expect honesty from others, then I need to be honest with others. Can't expect people to be honest with me if I'm not going to be honest with them. And also, I have a right to all of my feelings, which means other people have a right to all their feelings. So who am I to tell somebody else how to feel, right? These are very, very important. We could look at them both ways, right? And so I think that's quite interesting. I really like those. And you can find that just about everywhere, but where did I find that personal Bill of Rights? Yeah, that's just, if you type in Charles H. Whitfield, Healing the Child Within, and then you type in Personal Bill of Rights, you will find it. I actually found this on Pinterest, those pin board things. It's really quite interesting. So that's where I got that. But if you type it in, I'm sure you can find it, because I've seen it in several places. It's everywhere. And Avoca Getting Started Affirmations. I have a completely relaxed self-assurance, and I am sure of myself in all situations with all people. This is something that we could start saying to ourselves. I have a completely relaxed self-assurance, and I am sure of myself in all situations and with all people. Actually, I have gotten to that point, but that's just because I'm older. I've been working for years. I've learned that I can pretty well handle myself around anybody, and I've had several opportunities to prove it, in my lifetime. And so, that does help my self-confidence, my confidence levels, because I've worked with so many types of people. I've worked with people in kitchens, who like to drink beer and go out and party. And I've worked with executives in oil companies, like top executives. Like I've worked with people in the city government, and I've worked with all kinds of people in my lifetime, like through the, the very, very ultra rich, all the way down to the guy who's the dishwasher in the kitchen, And it's like I can get along with all of them, you know what I mean? And because I'm not judging them by who they are. I just treat people the same all the time. And so, some people like it, some people don't. I don't care. So I have a completely relaxed self-assurance. I'm sure of myself in all situations with all people. I can pretty well talk to anybody, at any time. But I've been able to do that, and not everybody can, So I don't know why, but that's not a problem for me. But for other people, this is something that we could say to ourselves to help ourselves to realize, to learn how to become sure of ourselves. I think what it is I just don't care what people think about me, and if they don't like me, they can go away. I really don't care. I don't have time for that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to please people. I'm not really a people pleaser, and I'm just myself. And if people like me, they do. And there's really nothing I can do if they don't like me, if they don't want to be around me, or they don't really have anything good to say about me. There's really nothing I can do about that. People will judge, and people do make judgments, and I really don't care, what people think, right? I just live my life according to me, my rules, the way I live it. I try to live a really decent life and care about people. But I just don't allow abusive people around me, and that always offends some people because they want to be able to hurt you, right? And I'm like, no, sorry, I don't allow abusive people in my life. And so then that gives me a bad rap because I'm supposedly I'm maybe a mean person because I don't allow abusers in my life. But, I don't care. I'm just done with abuse, and I'm not going to allow anybody to mistreat me anymore, and I don't care who it is, whether it's a working situation or a friendship, right? But we can learn that we can learn that we can be ourselves, right? But then we need to work on it, right? And we need to work on that with knowing who we are and be ourselves, and learn to love ourselves. That's the issue, and that's what I've done a lot of work in. Just learning how to love myself and how to care about myself, right? Very, very important things, right? So we'll look at these coping lists from Irving Studios tomorrow. Daily, weekly activities to take care of yourself. We're on list number 3, so we'll pick up, or list number 2 and number 3 we'll pick up tomorrow, I guess. And we have about a minute left here. We'll go to the Irving Studios. That's Child Abuse Survivor Monument. They have a Quilt Square meditation gallery you can go to, and it's really cool. There's all kinds of great stuff on there, but including meditation music and different things, videos. It's really cool. Quilt Square meditation, general meditation. So think comforting thoughts, right? Today we can think comforting thoughts. We can know all the ways that we are safe. excuse me, we can have hope, humor, healing, and higher power. We can embrace the power of your inner wisdom, right? Think comforting thoughts. So these are things that we can do to help ourselves get through the day. So I wish you a really wonderful day. You know, if you're struggling and you're having a hard time, I always tell people this on all of my shows. It gets redundant, but I don't care. I just keep saying it anyway. You reach out and get some help. Make a phone call. If you can't cope, you call a crisis line and you get some help. And have a great day, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.